what do you think? A subscriber asked, could this company be bought up in the future? Because it was someone who said like, oh, it'd be amazing if Beyond Meat bought them up and then used their facilities or stuff like that. But I mean, there are plenty of other businesses out there that have a much larger market cap and a lot more money. You think there's a possibility for that, and what would that actually mean? Uh,
Yeah, I think there's a great possibility for that because I think there's a huge kind of business expansion opportunity when we talk about very good butchers. Because if, let's say, they can get into 3,000 stores by the end of the year, then for a potential acquirer, they're not only picking up the product line, but they're also picking up 3,000 new stores.
hmm,
So if that acquirer has a product line that they would like to sell into those stores, this would be the perfect entry. And so I'm actually very optimistic, and I think there's a very good chance over the next little while that there's going to be a lot of consolidation and mergers and acquisitions within this space.
hmm,
We already see very good butchers going out and acquiring other companies.
yeah.
So for it to happen the other way, I think it is very, very likely to happen. And I
But you
think for
actually see
any
that
of
as a
these
good thing.
as a I mean,
Which is okay. I mean, I just wondered. Like,
yeah, like I think it's very likely to happen, and I think that as a competing consumer packaged goods company, whether I'm Beyond Meat or somebody else, I think the ability to purchase very good butchers and acquire a fantastic product line as well as 3,000 stores, hopefully by the end of the year, I think that represents an amazing, amazing opportunity for other companies that are starting to see the opportunity in this space and want to make an entry into the space without having to start from scratch.
right.
So yeah, I think I can see that. I would argue that the valuation of an acquisition like this probably would not be favorable for at least 6 to 12 months until we get to that larger store count and we expand that into the US a little bit more dramatically.
Right.
But I think at that point, then it would become a very opportunistic and very good opportunity for a different company to acquire it, especially if the price doesn't go back up to $8 or $9 and it stays. If it stayed around this level, but the company executes over the next year and gets into the U.S., I think there'd be no doubt that it gets acquired.
But my understanding, me personally, I would obviously want to be part of the growth story longer because I think that would be more beneficial. But the limited understanding, if someone buys up a company where I have a stock in, is still beneficial because if it is around $3, they're not going to be, the way I understand it, anyways, they're not going to go in and buy it for $3 and I'll just get my money back at that price. They normally have to go in above that. Obviously, I'm not sure what your experience is with that, but
Yeah, so it always depends on the deal,
mm,
and it usually also goes to a vote of shareholders. So, for instance, if somebody offers you below the market price, usually that gets voted down,
yeah,
and the deal doesn't get accepted. So that's usually why the price is actually higher, is so that the deal gets accepted. So yes, in that case, most of the time, it is usually a good thing for shareholders. It is usually a beneficial thing, and usually people make money on that. Now,
yeah,
the always depends on how the deal works. It's
yes,
always a negotiated deal, and usually there's very specific terms to it, such as for every share in Very Good Food, you actually own then X number of shares in the parent company. Usually it's a kind of deal like that, or you'll just get completely bought out. So, for instance, WestJet was an airline company based in Calgary here, operated in Western Canada for a long time. And I believe the shares were trading at like $21, $22, and they got bought out at $35
right,
by a private investment firm. And so all of the shareholders actually just got a check in the mail. So it really depends on the deal and who buys the company. It can definitely go both ways, from stock in the parent company to a check in the mail, or somewhere in between in a mix.
right,
It really depends. But yeah, usually if a larger company was coming in to acquire it, usually they would pay a little bit more than the market price.
right,
So it would be a good thing for shareholders, depending on what level and what price you got in.
yeah,
The only thing that may come in the way of that is the vision of the founders and the vision of the founding team.
yeah,
For instance, Mark Zuckerberg, doesn't matter how much money you gave the guy, he just wouldn't sell Facebook. because he was going to build Facebook. And I don't see the same conviction out of the founders, but I could be completely wrong. I
All
might
right.
be. Maybe this is something they plan to build into the next Procter and Gamble of the food industry. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, another company that we could talk about in another interview further ahead, but it is another Canadian company, plant-based company, but has nothing to do with food. Probably you've heard of it, GDMP, Good Natured Products. I mean, I found it interesting that their CEO actually stated that I could see us being bought out in 5 years from now, and that was basically his whole strategy. And I'm like, that felt a little weird for that's his idea, but at the same time maybe he's keeping it real, being realistic.
Yeah, it's a really tricky balance because you never want to build a business with the goal of being bought out, because if that buyer doesn't come around, then what do? You kind of you weren't doing it for the right reason, especially if
Right.
that buyer is there at the end or isn't
Right.
willing to pay your price. But if you build something for a reason, because there's a purpose, because you want to make a change in the world,
Right.
you're usually going to have better success, and buyers usually come to you without asking at that point. So
Right.
um, it sounds like that. It sounds like that's the direction we're going. They're raising money, they're raising capital, they're taking on debt, and they're expanding like crazy. So it feels like that's the vision that we're going for right now.
Yeah.
But from a strategic side of things, if I'm looking at this and I'm a large food company with a product line, let's say in Eastern United States, and I want to expand to the Western United States and Canada,
Mm.
then this is the perfect acquisition for me, because I can pick up a variety of stores and a new two new product lines that I've already got distribution on. So there's some strategic side of that from an acquisition point of view. I can understand it. And I think in this space, it happens a lot. Like
Mm.
if a small startup company comes out with a really cool CPG product and it does well in stores,
Mm.
they usually get bought up pretty quick.
Yeah.
There was a I want to say she was like an 18 or 20-year-old girl on Dragon's Den, which is like a pitch competition here in Canada, kind of like Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And she came out with these bag of snacks called Smart Treats, Smart Sweets,
Mm.
and they were like gummies that had almost zero sugar and no fats, and like they were healthy snacks.
Yeah.
And this very young girl built up this business, and the products did amazingly well in stores. And the entire product line just got acquired because it was so successful. It just got acquired by another company that already sells products in stores, gets added to the product line, added to the catalog, and just basically tacked on as additional revenue. And she walks away with a massive payday. So
Whoa.
that happens a lot in this industry.
Yeah.
I don't think it's uncommon in any way. And if they can build a good enough business, I'm sure they will get offers, and then it's up to the shareholders and the founders to decide.
Yeah, I think we also have to realize, like, some people talked about Beyond Meat, or there's another plant-based company called Maple. Is it Maple Leaf or Maple? A Canadian company, or yeah, I have to find that out which here. But another plant-based company. But I think there's also other risks, or maybe bigger risks, that actually one of the bigger meat companies out there, like Tyson Foods, they're already moving into the space too. That they might be interested to have a company that's already has its own brand, is known for being a plant-based, care about sustainability and health, and maybe kind of like woke wash their brand, knowing that today Tyson Foods has, when you think about that, me anyways, you think about destroying the planet basically and destroying animals and things like that. But if you buy a vegan company, you're kind of like woke washing it a bit to some extent.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. I would be
Mhm.
surprised if the founders sold out to a meat company, just because I think it kind of goes against their morals and values. But
Yeah.
it's definitely a possibility, and I think I think these large meat producing companies would be absolutely blind to realize that this trend is not at least picking up steam,
Mm.
and it's growing quickly. More and more people are switching to plant based diets. More and more people are becoming vegan,
Yeah.
and it's growing exponentially fast, especially around the world. Not necessarily in North America. I think we're probably slower than most places.
Yeah. Europe is
But
extremely quick when it comes to that.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think that we're far behind the curve on the plant-based diet and how people think about it. But I
Yeah,
think it's a tidal wave that's coming in pretty quickly,
yeah,
and I could see these like a meat process like Tyson Foods. I would be shaking in my boots if I were them, because if I look at the growth rate of any of the vegan or plant based products compared to the growth rate of traditional meat sales, the plant based products blow them out of the water. Right?
yeah.
It's absolutely insane, and so I think it's pretty easy to see that trend coming.
I think it's kind of like comparing General Motors to Tesla. That they're basically standing still now, and might actually go the other way around. And I think it's probably the same because when you look at the PS ratio, obviously on these like Conagra Foods and Tyson's, they have, yeah, I think Tyson is around zero point 0.7 in PS ratio. So that sounds good. Of course, you get a good dividends there, but that's because nothing is really happening there. So I mean,
Yeah, and it's a business that's been around forever. They know what their model is. They know what the margins are. The customers have been buying from them for 5 years, so it's easy to pay out a dividend and just keep doing what you're doing. But
yeah,
eventually, that's going to die. Eventually, that doesn't work.
yeah,
And the example that you mentioned before with Tesla and the car companies, we're starting to see it where every other car company is putting out an electric vehicle model,
mm,
and they're starting to get into the EV space, and they're starting to kind of push and start to compete with Tesla
yeah,
on those products, or at least try to compete. And I think it's going to be the same thing in the meat industry, where this industry is probably going to be a little bit more up for grabs over the next few years. And if you're an old company, you might want to get into the new space. And if you're a new company, you definitely want to try and compete with those old Tyson Foods type companies. So
yeah,
it's a really interesting dynamic.
yeah.
I think we will see mergers and acquisitions, and I think um, I I personally think in 2 to 3 years from now, we are going to have fairly large. In Canada, we don't have big sections for the plant based industry stuff, but I think we're going to have fairly large sections for it, and I think there's going to be a lot of competition in the space
But have you been in
because
Vancouver a lot? Because
a
my
little
my
bit.
my understanding of Vancouver is it's like the vegan capital of Canada in a ways. Because basically all plant-based companies. I mean, I think 80% of the companies I talk about is from Vancouver or something like that. So,
It is, and Vancouver is definitely much more into it and much more progressive than where I live.
all right.
I live in like the beef capital of Canada. There's like everybody, all the farms around Calgary, all have cattle. So I'm probably the opposite of Vancouver where I live.
Hmm.
But I think over the next little while, like it's going to be a dramatic shift, and there's going to be a lot of competition in the space, and it's going to be the companies that can create the brand
Right.
as the strategic identifier and the brand that represents them. I think those companies are going to do really well because even when I go to the stores, there's a company called Lighthouse. They do products that compete with Beyond Meat.
Hmm.
I don't see anybody picking up those products, and they're always fully stocked on the shelf. And Beyond Meat is the product that people are going to
Yeah.
and that they're buying. It's because they know the Beyond Meat brand, but they don't know that Lighthouse brand, even
Exactly.
though they're almost the exact same products.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I think I've tried to explain that to people. It's a premium, definitely on Beyond Meat, but they are. It's all about the branding there and having a product that's basically. I think there's sometimes double to compared to other plant-based options out there. But I think, especially since they don't care about vegans in that way. I mean, they won't mind people being vegan eating their products. I do every now and then, but they want to have. They're targeting you basically. So, have you
Yeah,
had a Beyond Burger?
I think I had one, but it was like a year or two ago. It was a little tough to remember.
All right.
I haven't had a whole lot of the different kinds. I have tried two or three of the Very Good Butcher's other products, though the sausage and the ground meat, and those were great.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say I'm an expert in the space with regards to taste testing and the different products, but
But I think that's really a good sign as a avid meat eater. If that's what you normally love, but you still think that Very Good Butcher's product is very appetizing and something you could continue eating. Maybe not only, but that's a good sign because as vegans, me personally, I haven't eaten meat for 20 years, so I was younger than you. So me, when I say that a product, oh, it tastes really meaty, and they're like, what are you comparing to? Like, really? so yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one of their big strengths is that their products are good, their products taste good. There's nothing wrong with them. Like everything about them is good, and this is
Mm.
coming from a meat eater.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the only reason that I'm still following the company, that I like the company, and that I want to buy back into the company
Right.
is because of those reasons.
Mm.
Because the product has to be good. If the product isn't good, then you're kind of dead in the water. After
Right.
that, you got to have the distribution and the supply chain, and it sounds like these guys are really starting to scale that up. And
Yeah.
now it comes down to just, is there demand for the product and is there sales? And it looks like on all of those fronts, this company is doing really well. So over the next 3 to 5 years, I don't think there's any way that you go wrong with this investment, especially at these levels. I think we've seen quite the correction from the highs of 950,
Mm.
and I think we're definitely starting to come into a very, very sort of nice price range. And I believe that they're also reporting their next set of financials here in the next little while. So when those come out, it should give us a nice recalibration on that price to sales ratio,
Yeah.
and that will give us a really good idea of where does this company stand right now compared to their numbers. And I'm
Yeah.
really looking forward to that because I think it could be a catalyst for the stock.
Yeah. Well, where do you see the annual this year, the 2021? Well, they have 4.6 last year. Where could you see them? Maybe it's hard to predict. I mean, but
Yeah, well, what was the last quarter? The last quarter was,
I think it was
let me
in
just,
they had their I think in May.
yeah.
Yeah, but
So
there
last
were
quarter was last quarter was
oh yeah,
2.6 million. So like,
and then they barely had gotten the Rupert facility to get going, right? So
yeah, so I mean, I'd like to see these numbers at least double year over year. Like that would be the minimum that I'd like to see, and I'd like to see the revenue year over year, geez, at least double or triple with
yeah,
these new facilities at a bare minimum.
yeah,
Would be my expectations. I haven't done the actual calculations on
no,
it
no.
yet and stuff,
Mm,
but like those would be my expectations. And
yeah,
if we can see that, it puts this at a reasonable price to sales ratio, and then I
mm,
think that completely justifies it with the growth rate we're seeing.
yeah,
I just did a video on them a little while ago, and I want to say their quarter over quarter revenue growth was like 600% on it.
yeah, six hundred eighty
And so,
percent at one point. Yeah, so
yeah,
yeah,
so like if we can maintain anything close to that
mm,
level of growth rate on a year over year quarterly basis,
mm,
um, that puts this company at a very high valuation, because a few years from now, the price to sales ratio compared to where it's at right now is going to be abysmal.
yeah, yeah. I think also considering that, I think one of their disadvantages has been that a lot of people have gluten issues, and all of their meat alternatives have gluten, wheat gluten, right? Satan, and but now they're coming out with gluten-free options. There's going to be a premium product in itself, a whole range of options, and I think that's when they can start actually competing a little. Not that I think they will, but to some extent with companies like Beyond Meat and Impossible Burgers, which is gluten-free. So I think that actually, yeah, they upped their game to some extent there, and it's actually supposed to be meatier, which means that they'll target the avid meat eaters more too. I think in that way. So it's going to be an interesting time to see what happens for sure.
Yeah, this next year is going to be really exciting for the company, and I think it's going to kind of, like I said, I think it's a race to stores right now, and
Mm.
if they can establish a foothold in enough good stores, good chains with enough product turnover and product sell through,
Yeah,
then that is going to be the key to success over the next year. Because if they try to do that in years 2, 3, and 4 from now,
yeah,
I think it's going to be way too competitive, way too difficult, and I think it's going to hammer their margins as well.
yeah. Definitely, definitely. And I've been actually thinking about when it comes to margins. When it comes to plant-based companies, I haven't talked about that on the channel so much, but when it comes to overall producing something that is plant-based, normally it's a lot less resources when it comes to water and grains and things like that. So I mean, I'm kind of wondering that a plant-based company compared to a typical meat company should, in the long run, have better margins. Uh,
I
It's
think
nothing.
so. I think so for sure.
Yeah,
And the last financials, I got them up in front of me. I think it was 36% adjusted gross profit, which
mm,
is in terms of the food industry, when you're selling wholesale to these stores, that margin seems absolutely phenomenal to me.
yeah,
So I think like at 36% GP selling to stores, like if they can scale that up and if they can maintain that or at least keep it above 30%, they're doing extremely well.
yeah,
Because I think, in my mind, and based on the companies that I've talked to and the people I know, selling wholesale to stores like this at 36% gross profit is very good.
mm,
There's not many consumer packaged goods products that can do that.
no,
And so, yeah, I'm pretty optimistic about it. And then, especially as they scale up these facilities, those costs should go down and the profit margins should go up as
yeah,
they scale up and they start to produce more at a time. So, overall, um, the financials look great. Now it just comes down to like their largest expense in the last few quarters here by far has been the general and administrative expenses.
yeah.
And I think if they can start to control that, bring that down a little bit, and still increase the revenue, that's what I'm looking for in the next set of financials, and that's what I'm going to be optimistic about.
Exactly. Well, perfect, man. I think we've covered quite a lot here when it comes to the very good food company. Obviously, we could probably talk about it a couple more hours, but that's just the amount of time we have. But I thought before we cut this short, is there something more that you would want to add when regards to your channel? Just take a look at your channel again here. Again, guys, here we have Zac Hartley. If you want to connect with him, make sure to subscribe. And as I always say, don't forget that bell button over here. And when it came to your page here, your Hartley Trading, is this something you would want to add here?
Yeah, please definitely check out my YouTube channel. Check out the website there. I've got a ton of free resources on the website that you can go through. You can download my trading journal, my spreadsheet for how I track my stocks.
Yeah,
You can download anything you want. Everything's free on there. And if you sign up through the link on there to go to Skillshare, you'll get 2 weeks free access to the entire platform where you can take any course you want. And you can also take my 9-hour course on stock market fundamentals. It'll walk you through everything you need to know about getting started. And if you cancel your subscription in under 2 weeks, you get everything completely free. So definitely check it out. Lots of great resources on there, and consider subscribing to the YouTube channel as well.
definitely, definitely. So, and I thought we should probably hook up again in the future, in the near future, because I feel there's other companies we could talk about too. You did an interview with Bouche Foods, which is also a Canadian plant-based company. Maybe a little competition with Tattoo Chef. I did recently an interview with Jim Pakulis, like you did too now in the week. It was really fun and great. So talking about them, maybe good natured, and some other stuff would definitely be really fun.
I would love to chat anytime.
Right. Thanks, man. Hope to see you soon.